Have you found that after a sleepless night, you're crying, you're shaking, you're so emotional? Well, if that's the case, then this video is for you. I hope you'll find it really helpful and that it will change the type of tears that you've had. So, without further ado, I just want to say that this video came about because I very often get this question from clients and followers. When I don't sleep, I cry, shake, I'm so emotional. Do other clients have this too? That's a very common question. And as you can already deduce, yes, it is very common. Sometimes it's not somebody I'm working with. Sometimes it's a common here on the YouTube channel. But again, it's a very common experience. And I really wanted to talk about it. And the reason I'm talking about this today is for two reasons. Actually, I had a client just today who, after a stretch of 6, 7 nights of sleeping well, had a sleepless night and was crying. And I really felt it was time to do this because I've had this idea for a long time. But also, it dawned upon me that there's this kind of analogy in my own life that I really wanted to share with you because I think it can really help clarify things. And this is the incident of the scrambled egg. And if you're when you're hearing this, you might see like, what has this got to do with sleep and insomnia? Trust me, this is actually, I think, very on point actually. So let me tell you a little story. And this is about my now 7-year-old, she's actually my 8-year-old daughter, but this was probably about 2 years ago. So I say she was about 6 at the time. And during the COVID, you know, during the lockdown era, the kids weren't getting breakfast in school, which they normally do. So I was making breakfast every morning, and I would ask my daughter how she would like her eggs. She'd always have eggs and toast, and sometimes she would say she wanted them over easy or scrambled or um, in some other shape or form. But what happened a couple of times was that sometimes she'd tell me how she liked her eggs. I made the eggs, I made scrambled eggs, let's say, and then I just said, okay, breakfast is ready. And then, a minute later, I would just see her at the breakfast table and she was looking sad. And suddenly, like, she just started crying. And I was like, What's going on?" I couldn't understand it. And then she would tell me, like, she would be crying, and through the tears, she would say something like, I wanted over easy. I wanted the eggs over easy. And I made the scrambled eggs. And, the first one or two times this happened, I was kind of like dumbfounded, like, but you like both. Like, you like scrambled eggs and you like over easy. So why can't you, like, just eat these scrambled eggs? Like, is it really that big of a deal? Uh, but I didn't say that much because on one hand, I didn't, I didn't want to like pressure her. I didn't want to criticize her, but I was a little bit sort of annoyed too because I'm like, these are eggs. This is a nice breakfast. But then, after a while, after this had happened maybe 2 or 3 times, I saw so clearly what was happening. It just dawned upon me. It was like, now I see this. Now I understand. And the reason was basically this, that when I served scrambled eggs, the way my daughter kind of perceived this or interpreted this was, my dad doesn't love me. He's not listening. He's not paying attention to me. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't love me. So therefore, I'm not safe because as a child, if you don't feel your parents' love, like that basically means you're on your own. You're not safe, right? And then when she doesn't feel safe, then the tears come, then the crying comes because sadness. One of the reasons we have that emotion, sadness, it's a bid for help. We ask somebody to like help us and support us and show us they love us. So that's why the tear comes. All this interpretation was very, very clear to me. I saw it. I saw it. Oh, now I know. Now I know why she's crying. Uh, but then, of course, like in my world, or the true the true sort of like interpretation of scrambled eggs. Why did she get scrambled eggs when she asked for like over easy eggs? Was simply that I mixed it up. I didn't hear. She's right. Maybe I wasn't listening. Like I wasn't paying attention fully. But that's not like. But it wasn't more than that. I just got them mixed up. That's all. The scrambled eggs doesn't mean that I don't love her, right? And when I saw this, things became so much easier. It became actually sort of like a real learning point for me. But before we talk about sleep here and see how this analogy fits in, I just want to point out that if I had, which can happen so naturally, if you make scrambled eggs for your kid and they're crying because you didn't make over easy eggs, you can easily go into like see, my kids are spoiled. They're so like entitled. What's wrong with them? And you could easily like just eat your eggs. Like I have tons of things to do. And imagine that if you're like yelling at your child in this, in this situation, then that interpretation, like my dad doesn't love me, like it would seem even more true, right? You know, it would just seem even more true when somebody like an adult is yelling at a kid like they seem like I'm not loved, and it would just it would kind of emphasize this, right? This also plays a role in our analogy. So now what I kind of want to just summarize this with is to say that the tears came from the interpretation. The scrambled eggs themselves are, they're not the culprit here. It's the interpretation of what scrambled eggs meant. That's what made my daughter cry so much. And this, I believe fully, is also why we can become so emotional after a sleepless night. Because we interpret this, our perception becomes a sleepless night means something is wrong with me. It means I'll never sleep again. It means I'm hopeless. It means I'm stuck. It means this is the way my life is going to be forever. Then the tears come. The tears come from how we interpret a choppy night, a night of little sleep. When in reality, a sleepless night just means we were a bit anxious. We were a bit scared of not sleeping. We were a bit worried. That's all. There's nothing more to it. It doesn't mean anything beyond that. But this can be hard to see, just as it was, just as my daughter's interpretation became, scrambled eggs means this, very easily for a brain that's in this problem solving mode, trying to figure things out. And, a sleepless night can often seem to mean many, many other things, which they don't. To me, a sleepless night simply means we were kind of trying to sleep. We didn't really want to be awake. We were scared, and that's all. And what we can also see is that when we start yelling at ourselves, then, again, this idea that something is wrong seems to be more true. And when I say yell at ourselves, what I mean by that, well, it is when we say, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get this right? Like I've been trying, I've been learning, I've been doing all these things, and I still had a sleepless night. That's kind of yelling at ourselves. That is a form of self-criticism. And when we're criticizing ourselves, then it just appears that there's something we should criticize ourselves for. It seems like we are doing something wrong. It seems like this idea that something wrong with us, it just seems more true. So again, this can just emphasize everything, and there can be even more tears. We pointed out that there can be even more tears for that reason. And another reason there can be sort of like even more tears, if you will, is if the sleepless night happens as part of like a speed bump, meaning if you've had a stretch where things have gotten easier. Maybe you've been a client of a coach. Maybe you've been somebody who's just followed the channel here. Maybe you read one book, something like that, and you started to see things getting easier thanks to your understanding, thanks to your courage, and actually thanks to you being more willing to be awake, being more unattached, etc. Well, let's say things have gotten easier like that, then so easily the brain can be like go into mode like, I think I figured it out. I think we got it. I think I got this under control, right? But just that, actually, just the idea that we have some control in itself, that leads to some pressure, because what if we don't? Then a sleepless night would actually mean that we don't have control and things like that. So the pressure that can come from the idea, the illusion that we have control, often leads to a sleepless night. And then this interpretation of the sleepless night becomes even more, it becomes even more, it seems even more to be true, if you will, because we had something and now we lost it. And then like, yeah, I just definitely something wrong with me because I was doing so well. And this happened despite everything I've learned, despite me being kind to myself, despite me being courageous. This happened. So then definitely this must mean that something truly is wrong with me, right? Not at all. It doesn't mean that at all, but it can seem to mean that even more so if you had a stretch where things have gotten easier. So I just want to point out that again, if you're kind of even more emotional after a stretch where things have gotten easy, that is also so very typical, normal and typical. And so finally here, I just want to say that when this becomes very clear, that a sleepless night, it means nothing more than there was a worry. There's no other meaning to it. There's no other need for any interpretation, or giving it any narrative like that. Well, then there can be other tears, and these can be like the tears of relief, the tears of seeing there's nothing wrong with me. I was a little worried, and there's nothing except for that. I don't need to do anything different. I can just be kind to myself. I can kind of treat myself extra nicely today, and then then things becomes more easy. Everything just becomes easier and more peaceful when we go down that avenue of kindness and understanding and clarity. So I hope this was really helpful to you. As always, let me know in the comment section if this resonated with you. And as always, if you find everything you need on your path to leaving the struggle behind, finding peaceful sleep and peace of mind forever, that is wonderful. If you would like some extra support on your path, then for sure head to our website and check out our many coaching options there. So again, thanks for being here. Thanks for tuning in. And I look forward to having you here real soon. Until then, bye-bye.